This is Jerome Corsi, and today is Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. Thank you for joining us at thetruthcentral.com, where we're doing a podcast every weekday. Let's get right into the news today. I'm finding that an article here is appearing pretty widely. I think is actually in the Wall Street Journal today, that Epic Times, 1/3 of the Americans are worse off financially. That's according to the Federal Reserve data in 2022 amid inflation. So the percentage of U.S. adults reporting that they are worse off financially climbed to 35%. That's 1/3 of the population in 2022, the highest level since the Federal Reserve started tracking this data in 2014. The Federal Reserve Board published its Economic Well-Being of U.S. Households in 2022 report. They published that in May 22nd, which is an annual assessment of how adults and their families are essentially feeling economically. It's drawn from the Survey of Household Economics and Decision-Making. And what the data shows is that 73% of adults said that they were doing at least okay in 2022. That's down 5% from the previous year. 35%, again, 1/3 of all Americans admitted to feeling worse off financially, the highest figure since the series began nearly a decade ago. In addition, more adults endured spending increases than spending gains. 40% told the central bank that their family's monthly expenses rose from the previous year. That was only 33% that reported that the year before. Nearly 1/4, 23% of all adults conceded their spending jumped, but their income was flat. So over half of the Americans in the survey reported they trimmed their spending. What this shows is basically, and many are putting off retirement. Again, the 31% of non-retirees thinking the retirement savings plan was on track. It was down 40% from 2021. So people are feeling more and more insecure with the inflation continuing, and I don't see that reversing. The Federal Reserve is again going to be meeting, and I'm seeing signs that the Federal Reserve may actually continue the increases. There are stories out today that they're going to consider an 11th round of rate increases. If the Federal Reserve does that, we're going to be going perhaps to 5.5%, which basically is the highest since 2007. But inflation is again not subsiding. It's kind of stubbornly staying at 5.5%. And with the amount of money being spent, again, there's no reduction in federal spending. So you're having a situation where we are in a trillions and trillions of dollars of money that we don't have under this modern monetary theory. You can just make it up, hypothecate it. It doesn't matter whether we have it or not. We'll just make it up, the money. Under this kind of a situation, you're facing a pretty grim reality of inflation eating away at the standard of living of the middle class. If we do raise rates again, we're going to find that you're going to have a situation where we are going to depress economic growth further. We'll be in stagflation, which is what I've been predicting we would be in going into this year. We'll have more bank failures. It looks to me like there are reports out that there's up to 300 banks that are teetering on instability. If their assets were fully marked to market, they may be insolvent. They're holding a lot of treasury bonds, the banks are, that are low yielding and hence have to be sold at or marked to market at discount. It's not a pretty economic picture we're dealing with right now. The Moody's this goes back into April, downgraded the ratings of 11 regional banks. It's when the instability of the banking was really in the headlines. It'll come back again if we continue to raise rates. These regional banks can't compete when rates, they're going to have to pay too much for their deposits. These banks start losing deposits, the regional and small banks, community banks. We're going to have a industry-wide banking crisis that could develop very quickly. And I'm watching it carefully and reporting on it because I think we could be facing a major economic downturn. And I'm warning people that stocks and are very risky investments these days because we could have a market crash that could occur at any time. And so that's the kind of reality that we're facing. And I think people have to be aware that that reality is one that is not going to be necessarily very pretty to experience. Now, let's continue with the stories I've picked out for today to focus on. The next one I want to move into is the Janet Yellen is now signed. These are two economic stories. Janet Yellen is issued a letter yesterday to Kevin McCarthy. This is her second letter. Now she's sounding like she's alarmed and panicking, much more concerned. This is again from the Epoch Times. And Janet Yellen has issued a renewed alarmist warning to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and other congressional leaders. She's saying essentially that because of the lower than expected tax revenue coming in with the economy slowing down, federal income tax revenue, that we may be out of money in the federal government by June 1. They're calling that X date, when we run out of money. So she's saying that the Treasury Department's best efforts is that it may not be able to meet obligations unless we get an increase in the debt ceiling, which means authority to borrow more money. We're already borrowing trillions and trillions of dollars, but her confidence in this X date estimate is that with an additional week of information available now, I'm writing to note that we estimate it is highly likely the Treasury will no longer be able to satisfy all the government's obligations if Congress has not acted to raise or suspend the debt limit by early June, and potentially as early as June 1st. That's what she wrote. Now, the rub here is that the Democrats want to increase the debt limit. We're already at $33 trillion in national debt, which is up dramatically from George W. Bush's administration, when we were about $10 trillion in debt, national debt. And it's escalating. And the Democrats do not want to cut spending. Republicans are trying to increase the debt level, but also to contain spending. My guess is what happens on these is you get a 11th hour compromise, and McCarthy will probably cave and say he, made his point arguing it. There's a lot of this kind of gaslighting going on in Washington. A lot of talk, a lot of hearings. The Durham report, nothing is happening. It was absolutely clear in the Durham report that there was no Russian collusion. We spent 2 years on it. I got involved. The Mueller team and called me, the prosecutors, on Russian collusion. They thought they had a tie to Julian Assange. I did not. And they wanted to indict me for lying. They gave me a plea deal. I refused to take their plea deal. They did not indict me because, again, I didn't lie. I had handed over my computers. I gave them all my information. I figured out that Julian Assange had Podesta's emails and was going to dump them just before the election in 2016, but I had no information to that regard. It was my own calculation. I was right. So I beat Mueller. But again, the Mueller investigation, in which we spent 2 years, was a hoax. And I'm finding some very interesting, there's some very interesting writing going on. I noticed that Mark Victor Hansen has a very interesting article out about how we're basically in this bizarre period of time when reality is being made up by these constructions of untruth. Essentially, we're being lied to. We've got constant, they've got the agenda of the left, which is a war on reality. There's essentially this whole idea of truth or reality, you've got this basically a global ruling class. It's imposing its new official ideology on us. And when you've got the power of the police, the military, the media, scientific so-called experts, academia, the culture industry, all this entire ideology driving woke values, you've got a new reality being constructed. This is coming also from, I've been following C.J. Hopkins on the consentfactory.org, which is a very interesting article. It's this rise of the new normal, which is a war on reality. So, in other words, global warming, which I've been arguing about and reporting on consistently here. I have a new book, which is The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. It's done extremely well. And I'm pointing out that the left's climate scientists, these hoaxers, know that the climate science is not correct, that the carbon dioxide is not the driver. There's the book. It's The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. Is doing quite well. I explain the science to you. Carbon dioxide is a trace molecule in the atmosphere. Water vapor is 70% of all greenhouse gases. It's had a very, very long history, 4.6 billion years, according to the scientists. And 80% of the time Earth has been around, there's been no life on the surface. We've had cataclysmic change, reported earlier this week on this volcano erupting in Mexico. We've had volcanic eruptions that have caused the Earth to go into a kind of little global winter, going back historically, where there have been periods where volcanic activity has caused it to snow in Great Britain in the summer. I mean, the Earth is a changing place. It's not stable and solid. And the rules that govern Earth are not linear. They're the major factor affecting the Earth's temperature is the sun. The sun is less hot. We have a little ice age. Or a more elliptical orbit. We have an ice age permanently for about 100,000. Every 100,000 years, we get another ice age. We'll have another one. And again, if you go back to Chris, if you go back to the books, my second book, which is in press and it's coming out this year, probably in November, which is a follow-up. It's a trilogy. I'm calling it the Great Awakening Trilogy. I'm trying to get people to wake up to the lies that you've been told. And this one's The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. And in this book, I'm arguing that the postmodern influence of Marxism means that they're now into this non-reality. In other words, they're saying reality, the Enlightenment, these are capitalist ideologies and they're enslaving people. They want to say, let's imagine John Lennon's song Imagine. Let's imagine a world without God. Let's imagine a world without boundaries. Let's imagine a world where everybody loves each other. Well, that's all wonderful, but it's a denial of reality, and it's an attempt to create a utopian future which demands totalitarianism. Because if you don't agree with what they're imagining in terms of the end of hydrocarbon fuels, you are, by definition, repressive, and they can be intolerant of you because you are going to be racist and all the other things that they attribute to those they dislike, and do not tolerate debate on the issue. It's a very anti-enlightenment era we're in, and it's an era where truth doesn't matter. That's largely why I've called this the Truth Central. The truthcentral.com is aimed at going through these narratives and trying to get the truth to you. The second book is going to be very powerful. These are not easy reads, but they'll be very rewarding reads if you really want to master what's going on. Chris, do you want to comment? We've covered a lot here already.
You see it all over the place, though, Jerry. It's been sort of creeping in for 50 to 60 years. I mean, I could argue a whole century, but there was a time when enlightenment, we kind of understand that some things that were done in the past were wrong, and we have to fix them. The problem is that kind of movement was hijacked over by the far left over the last 50, 60 years. And where people look at the 1960s era and say, hey, it was kind of cool. The music was great. People got to march. yeah, there were riots, but it wasn't as bad as you see now. It was a hip time. Let's relive those times. Let's find a new cause. And this is where the cultural Marxists have taken over every aspect of I'll say many aspects of the culture, not every aspect, but you're looking at the lexicon, you're looking at the entertainment industry, you're looking at academia. Those are what's controlling our children. And that's what's happened over the last many years. One shudders to think what could happen in the next 30. One's thinking that maybe the far left went too far now. They might go even farther in 30 years, one more generation.
Well, there's the very interesting article here by Victor Davis Hanson. Victor Davis Hanson. It's on American greatness, and he's saying that a sign of civilization in headlong decline is its embrace of absurdities. So we're witnessing an epidemic of nihilist nonsense. And he goes on with reparations. He's saying that how could a dysfunctional state like California contemplate $800 billion in reparations? The state currently faces a $31 billion annual deficit, and it's climbing. State's $100 billion high-speed rail project is inert, a veritable Stonehenge of concrete monoliths without a foot of track laid down. California's income taxes are already the highest in the nation. Its sales taxes, electricity taxes, and gas taxes and prices are among the steepest in the country. For what? He says crime, homelessness, medieval decay characterize the once great downtowns of San Francisco and Los Angeles. It's not even safe to walk alone in any major California city after dark. It just goes on. I mean, shoplifting and smash and grab theft are no longer treated as real crimes. The result is the flight of mass brand stores from our downtowns and our inner cities. And with all the accustomed cries of racism, even as racist public prosecutors pick and choose whether to indict the arrested on the basis of race. California's infrastructure, once the best in the country, is now among the worst. Decaying and crowded freeways, inadequate water storage, potholes are the new norm. Robust gas, oil, timber industries are now nearly. It's a very, very good editorial. It goes through inequality under laws that during the 2020 riots, basically, you're only going to be if you are conservative. This has now become political. He is talking about agencies. An FBI director under oath claims or ignorance 245 times during congressional testing, or leak a classified amount of private conversations with the president, plead impunity as Comey did. It goes on. It's a very, very good article on American greatness, and I think it deals with the insanity we're confronting daily anymore in America. Let's continue with the also the articles I picked on for today to cover on the Truth Central. And by the way, we do have now the store up, and the gear is available, so you can basically get cups and other things in the store. It's right on this. I really like this logo. It's my favorite logo I've had, the truthcentral.com with the eagle and the flag. Let's see if we can't get that logo seen around the United States. Okay, now to continue on the stories, this Viktor Orban, who I really do admire. He's the prime minister, Viktor Orban in Hungary. By the way, Hungary did publish a translation of my book, Killing the Deep State. And Orban, when he met with President Trump in the White House, brought him a copy of the Killing the Deep State in Hungarian, and they did discuss the book. So at any rate, Orban has said out loud that the Ukrainians have no chance of winning in the war against Russia. It said that, the Ukraine can't win the war. Short of NATO directly sending troops, which it's not willing to do, Hungary's going to lose. I think that's really a reality. The supposed counteroffensive is starting. And I see now Zelensky's even talking about invading parts of Russia, having raids into Russian territory, and asking for F-16 jets. This is the beginning of World War III. And the push to bring Ukraine into NATO and Finland into NATO, which I've been arguing has been a Democratic plot since 2013, when Hillary Clinton was basically being funded by Viktor Pinochet, who was a Ukrainian oligarch, to get rid of Yanukovych, who was the Russian duly elected president at that time of Ukraine. It began the Maidan revolution. We basically destabilized Ukraine, the State Department, the Democrats, and Soros. All right, so the Hungarian government is not part of the mainstream European Union approach to the war. Orban has said the only solution is peace talks. Basically, he said, looking at the reality, the figures, the surroundings, the fact that NATO is not ready to send troops, it is obvious there is no victory for the poor Ukrainians on the battlefield. That's my position, he said. And the war can be stopped only if the Russians can make an agreement with the U.S. In Europe, we are not happy with that, but it's the way it is. Well, again, I think this is sense. Instead of us giving billions of dollars to Ukraine, which is then stolen and not accountable, which we're doing, and getting more and more weaponry, we should face reality and realize that Russia and Putin are not going to lose this war. That doesn't mean that Putin is right or that he's a hero. It means that he's a nation state. Russia's a nation state, and they want their sphere of influence over Ukraine for access to the Atlantic through the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, and they want access to Finland for access to the Atlantic through the Baltic Sea. Now, this next project, the Green Project, hit an iron wall. There is a iron law which was coined by Oxford professor Brent Flyzberg. I don't know how to pronounce it. Flyzberg, F-L-Y-W, Flyve, B-J-E-R-G, Bjerg, so that mega projects cost billions of dollars. They take years to complete. They're going to be socially transformative. We're going to have green energy all over the place. We're going to have wind turbines. We're going to have solar farms. So they reliably come in over budget, over time, over and over again. So Boston's Big Dig, which went wildly over budget, California's high-speed rail, which is not getting built, New York's 12-year overdue and 300% over budget East Side Access Rail project. These are boondoggles which validate this iron rule. Offshore wind projects are not immune to the law. He's saying that essentially, if we take a look at New York state government looking to replace oil and gas-fired power plants with hundreds of wind towers off Long Island, set out in 2019 to create an offshore wind supply chain from scratch, beginning with a massive state-funded turbine fabrication factory about 100 miles north of New York City in the Hudson River. Ground has never been broken for the project, but the budget has. The price of the Port of Albany facility has already doubled from $350 million to $700 million. Additional $100 million will be needed for equipment costs. Similar situations playing out in New London, Connecticut, where a state-funded pier facility being built to support that Connecticut's offshore wind build-out is more than doubled in price, from an estimate of $95 million to $250 million. It goes on and on and on. And I think this is something that, again, we need to take into consideration. These huge, great projects designed to spend billions and billions of dollars to transform us into the new wind, solar, battery world don't work. Obama proved this with Cylinder. We've already gone through this, but we don't learn from the past. We, again, are ideologically driven to think that wind and solar are the answer. Well, they're not. And I think countries like Norway and Finland are beginning to realize this. Last story I posted today is Norway has made a decision to step up oil exploration, and which is completely contrary to the European Union's determination to move away from hydrocarbon fuels, so that these climate activists are now saying that Norway is abandoning the Paris Agreement, which was to get to net zero emissions by 2050. The Norwegian Energy Ministry said that the country would be stepping up oil and gas exploration in the Norwegian continental shelf to improve its energy security and the energy security of its friends and neighbors in Europe. The energy minister said in Norway that the petroleum adventure in the north has only started. Said that he's calling on Norway's oil and gas companies to fulfill their social responsibility to ensure this energy security of the country and to leave no stone unturned to boost gas production. Norway's had a clean grid. It has abundant hydrocarbon resources, and climate hysterics don't like to talk about it very much. But basically, you find that Norway is very leftist sensitive, but they're also reality oriented, and knowing that they are not able to sustain the modern industrial society, the population, without extraordinary costs, unless they go back to hydrocarbon fuels. Or, as we reported yesterday, the other alternative is to go to nuclear power. And that's, again, I think, something that's unlikely to happen simply because of the political motivation, the strong resistance of any green movement to anything, that has to do with the Finland, I reported yesterday, cut its energy costs by 75% by turning on a new nuclear power plant. These are the realities. Now, I was going to post one more story today, but it's the Financial Times. The Financial Times is very reluctant to allow you to post their stories. And so I will probably subscribe to the Financial Times and post a few of them. At any rate, what they're reporting is that there's a new gold boom started. And they're finding high security vaults in London's Mayfair, which is one of the tonier parts of London, exclusive upscale, where the glass is thick enough to resist automatic gunfire, and 4 control rooms keep watch around the clock. This is where they have vaults, cost as much as £12,000 a year. And clients growing to an alertness to a new world order have begun to buy gold and stick them in these vaults. At the same time, central banks are buying gold. The central banks bought last year over 1,079 tons of bullion, the most since records began being kept in 1950. And gold has been hovering now close to its nominal all-time high of $2,072 per troy ounce. Since March, it's been holding there. I think gold is going to break out, and as we get into we're right at the cusp at the very beginning of an economic downturn. Chris, if you'll show the Swiss America, we have 2 things on the website that I think are very important in preparing for this future downturn. Number one is Swiss America and this Walking Liberty $50. Please fill out the form. I say this repeatedly. I'm going to do it every broadcast because I want people to get some of this silver. Silver is going to appreciate faster than gold. These are coins that are about 90% silver. First time offer, introducing yourself to Swiss America. You can buy up to 250 of these coins at about the value they're worth in the silver. It's kind of a lost leader for Swiss America, but it will introduce you to them in their consultative selling. I think you'll find it to be very beneficial. Also, the Macmillan Agency. Matt is going to be my son-in-law here very shortly, and I've worked with him for a considerable period of time. He is expert on annuities. He's been selling annuities and indexed universal life by internet and phone. If you'll fill out the form, there's a form on his page on the sponsors. He's a sponsor to this site. You will see that you can fill out the form, and Matt will get in touch with you personally to talk about your annuities. Swiss America will help you take a 401k or an IRA and move it into gold for long-term appreciation, as well as to buy some gold to maintain the purchasing power of your dollars, which are going to shrink as soon as they increase the debt limit. We'll be printing more money. And Matt can also show you how to take an old annuity, which has low yields, and if it's out of surrender charges, you can exchange it for a new annuity with a 1035 exchange without paying any tax consequence whatsoever. Annuities do very, very well in a high interest rate environment, and I don't think we're going to get out of the high interest rate environment anytime near soon. Chris, would you like to comment?
I kind of agree with you on that. It's the Federal Reserve has raised rates constantly over the last few years, fighting under the guise of fighting inflation, but we see where that's going. We're going to see some real issues in the real estate sector as the interest rate goes up because the mortgage rates are going to go up, and people who think they're investing in properties they're going to gain phenomenally in value at this point are going to be fairly disappointed again if the mortgage rates keep going up, because there has to be some kind of middle ground as to uh, people buying new houses. Again, buying, because if the mortgage rates are too high, then property values, people aren't going to pay as much for certain properties around the country.
Well, and also, I mean, I was going to post this too. I follow this wolfstreet.com, WOLF street.com. What we're finding is that price of renting is going up, so that you're getting rent inflation, which is accelerating now to red hot levels. The Zillow Observed Rent Index, which is very reliable, is showing that advertised rents that landlords hope to get when a tenant signs the lease jumped in April 0.6%, which is the steepest increase since August. The bad news on the inflation front is that the landlords want more money for renting their properties. Even if they don't get rented, they want more money for the ones they are renting. And that's going on across the country as renters we're getting a nation of renters pretty soon. There's also the prices of new homes are dropping further. Builders are cutting prices to stimulate sales. Previously owned homes are languishing, and the prices of the median prices of a single family house is falling. In April, it fell to $420,000, down 8% from a year ago, down 15% from the peak in October. So housing prices are going down. Mortgages are more expensive because of the interest rates being high. So you're paying a lot more to buy a property. And by the way, the delinquencies in the subprime auto loan-backed securities have had their second worst April ever. So there were a lot of car trading in during the pandemic, where people traded in an old car and paid a premium. So the new car was financed at a premium. A lot of these now subprime auto loan delinquencies of 60 days or over, rated by Fitch Ratings, is the worst delinquency rate in the 21st century was in August 2019, 5.93% of total balances in default. We're headed back there again to those kinds of levels. The worst rates of delinquencies were 5.96% in October 1996. In January 2023, we again had 5.93%. If the delinquencies continue to increase in the subprime auto, see delinquencies in the real estate market as vacancies down in downtown buildings are continuing to escalate, we're going to see a real estate crisis again, which I think will cause a major bank failure in the near future. Any last comments, Chris? I want to make sure we stay within the time limits today.
It's going to get even worse because people are going to want to buy cars. Those supply problems have caused car prices to go up. Supply issues have caused housing prices or new houses to go up. Of course, people taking advantage of the real estate market, causing that to go up. While interest rates are going up, there is going to be a critical mass, and people are just going to be unable to pay. Like you're saying with the rents. Rents are there was a guy, I'm in New York. There was a guy, I always forget, Jimmy McMillan, who would run for some kind of office every couple of years. And I remember when he ran for governor, did a full debate, and his one line with every question was rent, is too damn high.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember
That's
that.
right. He even started a party called the Rent is Too Damn
Yeah,
High
I
party.
remember that.
How prophetic.
Yeah, well, he should be around today. Let's wrap up with my vital C. I mean, people are saying, again, I keep pointing this out, that I look younger and my hair is going to color in it again. It used to be solidly gray. This My Vital C, which is on the website, is a remarkable molecule. Most people know very little about it. Carbon 60. It is a 60 carbon atoms in a cage structure. It has remarkable longevity principles. It makes you feel better, sleep better, more vital, more energy. At least that's what it's done for me. It's not an FDA approved product. It's a supplement. Comes for cats and dogs, by the way, who do like it. Our cat and dog like it a lot. Comes in coconut oil. I like it in olive oil. I really recommend you try it. If you just click these bars, you'll go directly to the My Vital C website. It has hair products, which I use, creams. They really have a remarkable impact. This carbon 60 is a extremely interesting and newly discovered molecule, and there are thousands of scientific studies on it, and it has really exploded in the supplements market. I strongly recommend you give it a try. I have, and I'll swear by it. I think I've been using it for 4 years. Through all the struggles I've gone through, it's been a very turbulent 4 years of my life, but the My Vital C has been a stalwart of. I take it every day. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Wednesday, May 24th, 2023. I know things look dark. I always say in the end, God always wins. I say that in the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14. God will wait for us to act first. Pray, repent that we've let it get to this point. God can solve these problems. We'll be back tomorrow. We're broadcasting every weekday. This is The Truth Central with Dr. Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us. God bless.